Let's talk about the complex sentences you need to use in your CELPIP writing and speaking. These are words or phrases you use at the start of a sentence. They give you a lot of marks because they break the sentence into two parts. For example, although. Although I am sick today, comma, I'll still go to work. Now you can use this in speaking or writing. In writing, of course, you put a comma where the clause is ending and another clause is starting. So breaking the sentence into two parts makes it complex, gives you marks, and that's what a word like although can do. But there are many, and we're going to cover them in this video. The next one is given that. So you start a new sentence and you use the words given that. You could say something like, given that the economy right now is on the brink of collapse, comma, if you're writing, we need to come up with new ways to make the economy better and create jobs. So what you have done is presented a situation. Given that, this is the condition, and then the result of that condition. This is very good for situation-based sentences. The next thing you want to use is considering. This is also similar to given that, where you put a situation first and then you explain the result of that next. Considering we have a quota to meet in this job, comma, if you're writing, or pause if you're speaking. So considering we have a quota to meet in this job, we need to start selling some merchandise right away. So again, it explains two sides, considering the situation, and then the result. As a consequence, what do we need to do? The next one you need to be using, and it's very easy to use, is while. While presents two different conditions, and it could usually be taking place at the same time. For example, while Sarah is cooking outside, Beth is working on her artwork. So there are two things happening at the same time. But it doesn't have to be in the exact time. It could be in two different places too. It could be while the US is working on military, China is working on the economy. Now another one you don't want to confuse with while is the word whereas. And I put this especially here because this can make a sentence complex, but it's not supposed to be used at the start. It's similar to while, but it's used in the middle of sentences. For example, Sarah is cooking fish, whereas Bob is trying to make drinks for everybody. So you see, whereas is in the middle, never at the start. So that's an important distinction which people often forget. However is another such word that can make a sentence complex, but just place it in the middle. It's used with contradiction. For example, saying opposites like, Sarah likes fish, however, Bob likes meat, okay? And here you have two opposite things happening. But if I wanted to say the word although, as I explained earlier, you would use it at the start. Although Sarah likes fish, Bob likes beef. So that's the difference between although and however. Both can make sentences complex. The next one we have here is based on. Very similar to the second thing we discussed, given that. Based on is, again, explaining a scenario, a given set of conditions. Based on the norms we have in the society, having a second or third marriage is not appropriate based on the norms. So you would start the sentence with based on, you could end it with based on. It would present two different sides of a story. Then we have something like due to, and here we blame something. For example, due to the rising costs and expenses, a lot of people have to resort to two jobs. So now it is because of this or due to this, this is the consequence or the result. And these words and phrases, again, make sentences complex, give you more marks by using a range of a vocab, and it is mentioned in the marking criteria that you got to do it. So do it and do it effectively. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll talk soon. CELPIP tips in 4 minutes, and today we're going to cover speaking, the worst mistakes that students make that destroy their chances. The first one is not breathing properly. This breathing technique has to be used in multiple places. The first place you want to use it is right at the end of your prep time, before you start speaking. Now, when the recording starts, a lot of times people panic and they're just saying words out of control, and that start just derails the entire momentum for not only that answer, but for others. So what you want to do in the last few seconds of your preparation time, take a deep breath, and that helps you prepare and get ready for the recorder to start, and off you go with a brilliant, controlled, confident start. Then you want to breathe in between sentences, breathe in between points. As long as you take a breath for just 1 second, you're doing good. In fact, you're doing what top public speakers tell you to do. It also will add to your marks towards tone because that shows confidence and you will have good emphasis by breathing better. Now, not correcting yourself is another big problem. So what happens when you make a mistake in CELPIP speaking? And I do this in my YouTube videos. Sometimes I make a mistake. Native speakers make mistakes too when they speak. So what do you do to fix that? Because you will lose marks, absolutely, if you make a mistake. The benefit in CELPIP speaking is you're being marked by a human being instead of an AI. So if you make a mistake that is very natural and you're able to correct it, the human will give you marks for it. If you don't correct it, you have a 100% chance of losing that mark. Here's what I mean. If I say, I did not done that by mistake, so I'm going to correct myself right there. Sorry, I meant I did not do that. Or pardon me, do that. So just correct the last part. This helps show the examiner that that was just a minor mistake and you know the correct grammar and you didn't do it on purpose. This is something that happens in native language as well. When we're speaking in casual conversations, it's very normal. You want to do the same thing in CELPIP. Let's talk about the timing and some major mistakes. So the first thing I'm going to cover here is timing. This is a major mistake if you don't finish on time. If the recorder stops and you haven't finished your conclusion, you lose marks. Or let's say the recorder stops, you finish your sentence, you feel better, but you didn't do the conclusion. You will lose marks too, because you were supposed to have a conclusion smoothly done, and then the recording time should stop. So leave a few seconds before the finish time just to give yourself a little room. The other major mistake is using ums. This is not only a major, but the most common mistake. Avoid using ums. It's a filler word. Every time you use it, you lose marks. Also, repetition, which is the third thing here, is another killer, which is a common and major mistake. If you keep saying words like and, but, it's repetition. Or even if you use things like I can see, I can notice, it's an overuse of I. So avoid repeating and avoid these three major mistakes. Now, let's talk about connectors, because it's another important element that people often ignore. When you're speaking on your own, 1 minute or 1.5 minutes, it's a lot of time for you to get a little breather and for you to organize information. And these are 2 marks right there, coherence and tone. For them to come nicely in your marking scheme, you want to make sure you're using good connectors. Furthermore, moreover, however, although, likewise, there are so many that you want to use in between your points instead of you just talking like a crazy person nonstop. And if you don't use them, you're using most likely and, or you're not using anything, and that will reduce your marks. Another mark you're going to get by the use of connectors is vocabulary and complex range, advanced range, broad range. Those are the marks you'll be getting by using good connectors. So ensure you do that and ensure you avoid these mistakes in CELPIP speaking. Please also like, share, and subscribe. For more content, we finish our videos in 4 minutes, giving you the best content in the least amount of time. Take care, guys. Guys, we're going to talk about CELPIP listening, parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 parts. They increase in levels of difficulty. So 1 is the easiest, 6 is the hardest. Now 1, 2, 3, I would say are the easiest overall. So we have a different strategy for these. Here, remember, and throughout your listening test, you will get the audios first and questions later. So you have to take notes on a piece of paper and then look at them to answer the questions. However, from parts 1 to 3, here you will see you have to take no notes. These are easy parts. In fact, if you take notes here, you might get too confused. So just listen to them and answer. You will have enough memory to remember what has been said. Use that and also use the tone. What they're saying, are they happy, sad? Use that to relate to the discussion and be involved in it, because a lot of questions will come based on how did this person interact with that person, were they happy, were they agreeing or disagreeing, etc. However, as soon as you move to part 4, you got to take lots of notes, and the same applies to parts 5 and 6, which we'll cover later on. Here, it becomes impossible to remember everything that was said. The human mind just cannot remember all of it. It's too much. So the more notes you take, the better off you will be. Now, you also still want to memorize or remember some of the things that were said. You cannot just take all notes. Use memory and a combination of notes to really write down everything as well as remember what was said. So when you're faced with the questions, you really remember everything from the transcript. The final thing is you don't want to just rely on words when you take notes. You want to make arrows, pictures, as well as symbols. So they will summarize a lot of the content that was said. If someone dropped from the top floor to the second floor to the third, and you make arrows signifying that, you avoid writing all of this. The same goes for pictures and symbols. Now you want to do the same things in part 5 as well, but here it is going to be a video. You would have usually 3 or more people talking. So what you want to do in addition to what you already did in part 4 is make columns. For each person talking, make a separate column so your information is organized. You know what each person said. Now also you want to arrange each of these sentences or sayings from these people in sequence. You don't want to misplace the sequence because a lot of times the questions are going to ask you, how did this person respond to that person? Now, if you have them in sequence, you know exactly what was said and how the response came right after that. Finally, you want to look at their appearances and faces because questions will ask you, how did this person react? Were they angry, satisfied, or whatever based on their facial expressions? Note those. Also note their appearances. Are they in the red shirt, blue shirt, glasses, hat, or not? Because questions will ask you, what did the person in the blue shirt say? Finally, when you go to part 6, this is again an audio, and this is where it's a debate. Usually it's 2 or more people agreeing or disagreeing on something. And what you want to do is again, copy the same things from part 4 and part 5. You want to take lots of notes. You want to remember stuff with memory. Use arrows, pictures, and symbols, but also understand it's a debate. That's the format of this type of listening part. You also want to separate rows. So when one person says a certain piece of information, another person is going to oppose it. So make sure you make a separate row for each person coming up and giving their opinion to keep your information organized. And finally, make happy and sad faces. Now, this is something that will help you understand who was positive about this topic and who was negative, who was supporting this person and who was against the other person. Instead of writing it all down, the pictures will help you explain the entire story. Please subscribe, like, and share. We'll talk to you soon. In this video, we're going to cover some important reading tips and tricks. We're going to cover all 4 parts, talk about difficulty, strategies, and a lot of things in just 4 minutes. The first thing is in parts 1 and 4, there is something similar. You get a passage, then you get multiple choice questions. After you're done with that section, you get another section, and that is a response letter or comments to the previous passage. So there's a time limit for parts 1 and 4. A lot of people just say, okay, we have 2 sections. We'll give 50% time to one section and 50% to the other. This is wrong. Remember, in the first section, you want to spend 80% of the time because you would be looking at the passage for the first time and answering the multiple choice questions for the first time there. Now, when you have already understood it, spend the 20% remaining time in the response or comment section, which is section 2. That will make your life easier and it will help you with time management. Now, when we move to part 2, that is a picture question. It's called reading, but you see a picture instead of text. Now, this picture does have text and you want to analyze the picture, see what they're talking about there. Take 2 minutes to do that. In this part, you first look at the picture in detail because in 2 minutes, you can look at everything in the picture. It's not long. There's not a lot of text. So do that and then jump on to the questions. Usually we do it the other way around, but in part 2, it's different. However, when we go to part 3, the strategy changes. Here, you got to look at the questions first. In part 3, you have a lot of questions, about 9 usually, and then you have 3 to 5 paragraphs. You have to match the paragraphs with the questions, which means is the thing mentioned in statement 3 being mentioned in paragraph A? Is the statement in 2 matching paragraph D? So you gotta match them with the statements. Now, if you read all the questions, what it does to your brain is it tells it or reminds it what keywords you have to look out for when you're reading the passage. So now you go to the paragraphs, you start reading them one by one. All of a sudden, some keywords pop up and you're like, this was mentioned in the question. You stop, you read it in detail, and then you're quickly able to match it. And that's always going to be the benefit when you read questions first in part 3. So read all of them with detail and with attention to keywords. When it comes to part 4, that is the most difficult part. In part 4, what you need to understand is the vocabulary level increases. So now you're expected to know good words and phrases. At the same time, if you understand another key thing, you will do this very successfully. Part 4 is a debate. It's usually two people arguing about one topic. As long as you understand that, you can answer a lot of questions because they ask you, how did person A disagree with person B, or vice versa. Now, again, as I said, this part is the most difficult part. The difficulty level increases from parts 1 to 4. Now in IELTS or in different exams, you would just say, okay, we'll do parts 1 and 2 quicker and then give more time to 3 and 4 because they're difficult. You cannot do that in CELPIP. You have a dedicated time for each section. You just need to be mentally prepared for the hard levels that are about to come. And remember, at home, practice with decent vocabulary lists because the last parts will require you to know good words. Finally, my last tip is going to be for you to paraphrase. When you look at the questions, do not expect the same words to be mentioned in the passages. Words are paraphrased easily. What is written in the question will definitely 80% chance not be written the same way, and the sentence can be also varied. So make sure not to stick to certain keywords and try to find them, but also look at the paraphrased versions, the synonyms, and they will be the ones giving you the entire answer. Please like, share, and subscribe for more great CELPIP reading tips. Let's talk about CELPIP writing. Here, there are major mistakes people make and you want to avoid them. And the first thing is to do with semicolons. Guys, if you're looking for a CLB 9 or higher in CELPIP, you cannot avoid semicolons. A lot of you do, and that's what differentiates people who score really high and those who don't. Semicolons technically separate 2 points which are in one sentence. Let me repeat that. There are 2 clauses that are separated with the use of a semicolon. So how I would use it is by saying today the weather is extremely hot, semicolon, it's better not to go outside today. So by putting these 2 points in one sentence instead of 2 sentences, I am avoiding making a simple sentence, which usually has lower marks, and I'm also using an advanced punctuation, showing the examiner that I deserve a level 9, 10, 11, 12 because I'm using academic writing approach. So make sure to use that. Not using that, you will score lower. The next thing is paragraphing. So here I'm going to talk about task 1 and task 2. You need to have a certain amount of paragraphs. If you overdo them, you're going to have too many paragraphs, and each paragraph will have a very few words. And if you do a few of them, less than the requirement, what happens is you have too many things in one paragraph instead of separating them efficiently in each paragraph. Technically, an English rule is you should have one major or one main point per paragraph. So how do you do this? Well, in task 1, in the introduction, in your email, mention the purpose or greeting. That's the first paragraph. The next 3 paragraphs are going to follow the 3 bullet points in sequence, 1 paragraph per bullet point. And the final paragraph is your conclusion, which is a greeting as well. When you go to task 2, you have 4 paragraphs. The first one is the intro. It gives your opinion. The last one is the conclusion, rephrases your opinion. And body 1 and 2 detail your points. 4 paragraphs. Make sure to get that accurately done. Let's move on to our third point, and this is where people do not differentiate between formal and informal writing. They use the same jargon, and this can drastically reduce your marks. For example, let's understand what an informal letter or email is, and then you can differentiate between the two. An informal email in CELPIP is to be something that is written to friends or family. Friends or family, that's informal. Everybody else is formal. Remember that definition. Okay, you can repeat it if you would like. Now, when you write to informal people, and if you use words like, I'm looking forward to, it would be appreciated if, and so on. If you're using these complex words that are used for formal situations, your informal email will lose marks. You might be thinking, I'm using high levels of vocabulary, but it's not tone appropriate, and that's where you lose marks. Similarly, don't say what's up or hey in formal emails. Now, let's move on to our last point, which is task response. Again, this is where people lose marks. I have multiple tips here for you. The first thing is, when you start writing, before writing, spend 2 to 3 minutes brainstorming. Think about the points you want to say at the start, and here you can make an outline. Later, you can remove it, erase it, and just have the main body. Now, that helps you keep in line with the actual question throughout your writing. You don't miss the question. The other thing is, when it comes to task 2, don't just talk about your point. Talk about the other side as well. What you want to do is talk about the benefits of your opinion and the disadvantages of the other opinion. This is a complete task response for task 2. When it comes to task 1 emails, you make sure you have at least 1 to 2 points per bullet point. That's it. That's all you got to do. If you follow these methods, you will not lose on the task response mark. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you want CELPIP coaching, check out the link in the description and more details. We'll talk soon. Take care.